Alright, Wargamers, so today's story is called The Garden of Thyria. And so, straight out of the Orc Warclaims battletome, in Thyria, the Kruelboyz of Lake Innis find their wetlands encroached upon by humans flooding from Mistral Peaks. The worshippers of the God King are fleeing from chaos invasions to the east, but they soon learn the wetlands are no safe haven. One of the favorite traps of the local Grinnin' Blades is to poison the springs upon which the travelers rely with noxious filth. With their stomachs distended by dysentery, the humans are easy prey. However, as Nurgle answers their prayers for deliverance, the bodies of the living and the slain alike swell to bursting point. Maggots and flies spill from them in such numbers that the very air seems alive. As the Father of Plagues sends his latest miasmas and diseases to further corrupt the region, the Innis's Grinnin' Blades find themselves wading through not their home territory, but the very Garden of Nurgle. To their credit, they navigate the marshy hellscape with impressive expertise, surviving for several weeks through a combination of sheer determination and natural toughness. Grandfather Nurgle is so impressed, he allows them to survive, albeit riddled with plague, as test subjects for his repulsive experiments. Their twisted society still ekes out a life there to this day. Okay, friends, so for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, let's break this down here a little bit by bit. So Thyria, if you didn't know, is actually located in the Everspring Swath. Man, I have no idea why that's so hard for me to say. But basically, Ghyran, okay, the Realm of Life. There's this whole little section of the map in the older maps, as well as the newer ones from, I believe, the Broken Realm series, where there's this whole section of Ghyran that's completely overrun by the forces of Nurgle. Now, one thing that's a little bit hard to convey throughout the story is that the timing of it is actually in the Age of Chaos section. They have the little timeline things all broken up by, you know, ages, and Age of Chaos, this is the last story in the Age of Chaos before they jump into the Age of Sigmar. So that's our time and place, okay? But can we say, I think the real moral of the story is that there has never been a more, shall we say, forlorn group of humans to ever exist, that they're trying to run away from chaos forces, and we have no idea who these people are. I mean, there's so many of these little stories that just feature, you know, capital P, people. No idea. They're trying to run away. They might be forest dwellers or something like that, I'm not quite sure. Coming down through a mountain range, I think it's called the Mista Mountains or something like that. Mistral Peaks. And it says that they are servants of the God King, which is actually interesting in Ghyran, because most people would be servants of Alariel, but not that that would help her much, or help them much more anyway. Neither of those gods are showing up. And they run into a forest seeking, you know, shelter of any kind. I totally get that. Makes a lot of sense. Now, this is where the Kruelboyz, and I'm not sure what this interaction or relationship is, but, you know, they do use poisons quite a bit. The Grinnin' Blades is kind of their jam, from what I understand. And while I prefer seeing, like, the stories that involve their use of, like, hallucinogenics and stuff, because making people, like, destabilize is just interesting as a warfare tactic, but in this one, they went out for the common dysentery, the bane of all Oregon Trail players. And this group of humans wound up exactly like your pioneers did, because everyone's just like keeling over. Now, the assumption could be made that any kind of disease, you know, dysentery in this case caused by a poison, does in fact empower Nurgle. Now, I don't want to make it sound like all poisons are of chaos origin, because there are destruction factions that use toxins that, you know, Nurgle rarely ever pops through with them. But I think it's because the Nurgle army, or sorry, the Chaos army was hot on their heels, and that Thyria was already coming apart at the seams. Maybe that made it more likely that the second there was an inn, the Plague God was like, oh, there's my chance, and then burst through with that. Like, even, it was so kind of amped up to the point that even a common case of dysentery could, like, unleash a demonic hellstorm. That's kind of how I view it, because otherwise it's like, well, anytime that they've ever used that, why doesn't Nurgle just explode onto the scene? But my thought is that it was just so much anticipation and power and all that kind of stuff just wrapped up in that area that maybe the dysentery stuff was just enough. And they did exactly what Nurgle boys do. They get fat, they explode, all kinds of nasty stuff. One thing that's interesting to me is that, like, even the corpses were exploding, so, like, I can just imagine... if it's a little bit easier if you've actually seen a dead body. But if you've seen a dead body, like twitches from like muscle spasms or whatever like that, kind of that same thing. But then like boom, it just bursts open. That'd be so sick. I worked in healthcare as a hospice nurse. I'm not just a crazy guy who watches people die. Little PSA there. But I can imagine, like, these orcs, right? So, like, they're up in the trees, scouting them out, kind of like hiding, probably laughing and jeering and that kind of stuff. The people drink the water, they start getting sick, and as they're dying, you know, that's when the orcs probably get a little more brave and kind of walk out and like tease them maybe, or just start laughing at them as they kind of keel over holding their stomachs. But my thing is, I wish I had a camera focused on the orcs, like their facial expressions of the Kruelboyz as things got weird progressively. Like, oh, they went down because of the poison. Ha 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 ha. That's exactly as I planned. Look, they fell right into our trap. And then the second, like, things don't stop moving, right? And you hear like squirming and like people are getting like, you know, way out of the norm, distended stomachs, and things get weird. Like, I want to see that like slow motion facial expression change of horror to like, I don't understand what's going on. Or like maybe they're thinking to themselves like, man, what did I put in that poison? Like, hot diggity, man, we hit some gold here. I don't know. But this is a fantastic example of how, frankly, Nurgle got into Ghyran in such force, is that we get this depiction, and I'll go over it more and more with the book of actual, like the Magakin of Nurgle lore stuff, but it seems as though his entry into Ghyran was really just capitalizing on moments where purely natural entropy happens. It was just magnifying what's already there. Like, yeah, people were already getting dysentery and that kind of stuff because it's just the technology level of the setting, I guess. But when it was inflicted with malice and concentrated amongst, you know, a group of ragged survivors that already are in a higher emotional state, that's the recipe for demonic incursion, right? I mean, it's a lot of his thing empowering him in a small space to a lot of people with evil intent. It's just like a huge doorway opens up and he seizes it. I can almost actually like see this as like an unintentional ritual, right? I mean, because it kind of has that feel to it. Right? He spikes the water, they all get sick, but how would that look vastly different from like a bunch of cultists of Nurgle poisoning themselves with diseases in order to gain his favor, like to reach out for salvation from him? Like the difference is pretty minimal. And I kind of like the idea of orcs just kind of like do-si-doing their way into an accidental demonic ritual and like ripping open like hellway to hell, you know, a gateway to hell kind of a thing. Like just insanity. Like, oh, not what I expected when I woke up today. All right, I'm here for it. Because the orcs are always there for it, right? This is what they live for. And one of the favorite things that Games Workshop does is the Chaos Gods are not just about humans, right? Because there's actually a story from 40k regarding Khorne, who has a group of orcs on a planet where they just get the chance to wake up every day and go kill, 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 and fight, 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 because they love to do it, which of course amuses and empowers Khorne. And if at the end of the day, if they die, he resurrects them and they get to do it all over again. It's like their Valhalla. Well, in this case, a bunch of Kruelboyz who are used to gross, fetid swamp living kind of inadvertently thrust themselves into the Garden of Nurgle, which is the most swampy, fetid, gross thing imaginable. And Nurgle's like, you know what? You guys are cool. Just kind of leaves them be, and I kind of dig that. They're like, you know, I have to give you a few diseases to make you kind of blend in with the locals. You know, you gotta keep up with the Joneses if you're going to be in the Garden of Nurgle, but you're welcome to be here. And can you imagine, like, they say Infinity is the most ambitious crossover event. That's got nothing on an orc cover, or Kruelboyz specifically covered in all kinds of plagues. He's just like licking arrows and shooting them and setting off entire pandemics. And unfortunately, because like the Nurgle forces don't really turn into an army or a warband, they kind of just die, right? They'd be like anyone who was sick just died as this terror was made open. We don't know anything about the Chaos Warband following them, or the humans' history themselves. So there's not really like an army to explore with this other than the Kruelboyz. And I do like stories like this for that exact reason of like, you know, it involves other factions. It does place them firmly within the setting, but ultimately it's a story about the Kruelboyz who got way more than they expected when they decided to poison a whole bunch of refugees. But it is a great depiction of the kinds of games that they play with people of just, oh, someone's in my territory. I'm not going to like shoo them away. I'm not going to draw a line in the sand. I'm just going to destroy it in a way that hurts you so much more than it hurts me because I'm ready for it. Like, I'm going to make this part of the realm your personal hell. And there's something interesting about that they're so in one with their nature and their environment, but also how their environment can be used against others And that's a capital E environment. I'm talking like poisons that they find, they can take them outside of the woods or the swamps. The stuff that they can take with them, of course, but like all of these elements go into creating an exceptionally dangerous kind of orc army. One that doesn't present itself in an arrogant sort of way like the giant, you know, big iron jaw guys do, where they want to walk out and just clobber each other. It's this incredible subtle that you can't trust the safety that you find. Because I'm sure these people were in the woods for quite a while before someone was like, hey, I found a water source. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they were just like trying to catch their breath, maybe feeling safe at least a little bit. And that's the point where it's very dangerous to get somebody. So anyway, I want to wrap up this video like I end all my videos, simply asking the question, why is this cool, right? What snapshot does this give us of the mortal realms? Well, it actually does quite a bit. It does give us a small glimpse into a time in Age of Sigmar history that we don't really know much about, which is the fall of Thyria specifically. It could give us a sense of how, you know, some of these initial tears into the realm of chaos opened up, and surely a mass poisoning or mass diseasing of a whole bunch of people in great emotional stress can probably do that. The fact that it brings in, you know, forces of what ostensibly would be order, right? Humans, Nurgle, Chaos God, and a destruction faction, I think is really nice. But I also like the fact that it places them rather firmly into the history. Like, they were there, you know, they didn't just magically appear out of nowhere. They were hiding in the woods, and now that Kragnos has come, well, now we can be a bit more proactive. But I like these historical snapshots that are like, yeah, I mean, there have always been things in the woods that we stay away from, right? You don't go into the woods after dark kind of a deal. And ultimately, it has one of the few stories that has a happy ending, in the sense that, you know, most of these stories, everyone just kind of dies, right? I mean, traditionally, you would have the humans die because of the poisoning and the Nurgle stuff, and then the Nurgle stuff then kills all the orcs, and then nobody's really won because nothing's happened, right? It's just demons are there, I guess, but they're not really living. Everyone's dead. But with this story, it ends with, and some orcs lived happily ever after. And it's just like, oh, you mean like some of them bought like the Willy Wonka golden ticket into paradise? That sounds super rad. Probably the happiest ending that Age of Sigmar, you know, fighters are ever gonna get. Like, if you play the new Kruelboyz and Warcry, like as part of your campaign, this needs to be an ending. Like, for, that would be the dumbest story ever. It needs to be an ending. And then they got real gross and lived happily ever after. So anyway, friends, that is it for me. Tell me your thoughts on the Garden of Thyria. It's a point in history I'm very interested to learn more about. I would love to have, like, I don't want to call it like a Horus Heresy series, but basically storybooks or whatever that are set in the Age of Chaos that give us a sense of what it was like when this was all unfolding. I would really like that. What'd you think of our Kruelboyz accidentally opening the portal to hell? Which is just the most fun Mr. Magoo accident ever. Or the Chaos forces that were supposedly following them. What do you think happened when they came over the hill chasing the mortals and found a whole bunch of orcs and a demon gate or whatever? Interested to hear your thoughts. Leave in the comments down below, and I will catch you all very, very soon in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Happy wargaming.